Hi everyone, today's our topic is going to talk about the exchange rate mechanism in Greece and Iceland. Firstly, I'm going to introduce these two countries' background information. Greece is located at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa. In 1981, Greece joined the EU. In 2001, Euro was introduced as local currency. In 2016, the share of Greece in EU GDP total was 1.2%. In 2017, it was also 1.2%. Therefore, in EU's economy, the share of Greece is small and relatively stable. Iceland is a Nordic island country. The exchange rate mechanism is independent. For the GDP of Greece, in 2008, it was $354.46 billion. Because of the GFC, in 2009, its GDP was decreased. Since then, the GDP was reduced every year. In 2017, its GDP was $200.29 billion. The GDP of Iceland in 2008 was $17.66 billion. Similarly, because of GFC, in 2009 its GDP was $12.94 billion. However, it was not the same as Greece. From 2010, its GDP was increased every year. In 2017, its GDP was increased to $23.91 billion. Actually, the government adjusted the interest rate to return to growth. When the interest rate is decreased, people do not deposit money to the bank. It stimulates the consumption and the investment. It can be seen from the chart. From 2009, the interest rate was beginning to decrease. In March of 2016, the interest rate was zero. From the chart, the consumption increased in 2009 dramatically and maintained it high. For Iceland, the interest rate was reduced from 2009. In 2018, the interest rate was about 4%. From the chart, the consumption increased in 2010 dramatically and maintained it stable. It can be seen from the chart. During the GFC, there was a small appreciation in Europe relative to US dollar and Australia dollar. It caused that the exports in the Eurozone declined during the GFC as products from the EU were relatively more expensive. For one thing, the global economy was generally in recession, so aggregate trade volume had decreased. For other thing, the share of exports in Eurozone had declined as well because of the relative appreciation of Europe. It was not rare that exports in Greece also faced a dramatic decline. Greece's government could not lower the interest rate to stimulate the export, as the interest rate of Europe was determined by ECB. The ECB aims to maintain the stability of the Euro and the Eurozone economies and to keep inflation under control. It has no direct mandate concerning Greece or any individual Eurozone economy in particular. Being able to devalue the domestic currency is significant. That had been proved by the UK in 1992 when the UK was facing a severe crisis. In 1990, England was facing an economic recession and high inflation. To get rid of the problem, England decided to join the ERM, which required that value of the pound has to be fixed to the value of the euro. The exchange rate between them must be set. When there is a raise in interest rate in the euro, the pound must follow the monetary policy. The UK was in need of an interest rate cut, while Germany wanted to keep low inflation. Therefore, they could not agree to cut the interest rate. England had no choice but to devalue their currency so that they can stimulate their economy by boosting the export, and its economy did recover after the devaluation. The currency in England was pound, which could still be devalued. In Greece, their local currency was euro, which cannot be printed or devalued by Greece. The ECB adjusted the interest rate by the general or average level in the Eurozone, which was above the level in Greece. How Iceland can recover so well, which the smallest economies in the world and the first country to suffer the economic hardship. The Icelandic economy was traditionally based on marine and other seafood before, and later started to develop the energy resources and banking industry. Icelandic financial liberalization leads the size of the bank to grow up quickly and provide a high interest rate in the money market. Hence, there is a large amount from overseas financing investment. However, when the GFC broke out in 2008, the interbank lending freeze. Icelandic banks faced the problem of lack of liquidity and led to the three largest banks collapse and the economy fell sharply. There is some policy adopted by the government under the sovereignty crisis of Iceland. It involved devalue the currency, let it had a large depreciation, introduced the capital controls to put a floor on currency, contain the inflation, and strictly prevent the foreign capital flight, and also tightening the fiscal policy, but the social welfare measures are still in place. As we can see that the main reason for Iceland to have recovery so quickly can be attributed to the independent monetary policy. Since Iceland has not joined the Eurozone and has its own currency, it allowed the government to have control of the currency market and devalue the currency. Furthermore, Iceland has the floating exchange rate. The government can cut interest rates to stimulate the investment as a result to enhance the export competitiveness. Boris Johnson thinks Britain will be more competitive after leaving Europe because it can make trade agreements and laws with other countries that comply with its manufacturing sectors. Since the second half of 2014, the whole world's economy has entered into a downturn and some EU members had the severe debt crisis, which requires all EU members to undertake the debt and solve the crisis. The EU pays more because it has a good income. The British immigration and welfare system is under high pressure since the EU regulated that all migrant workers and local and non-local accounts should be treated equally. The EU protects farmers by providing subsidies to farmers and setting quotas for fishing, which means that the EU causes people here to pay more for these things than in the international market. Once Britain leaves Europe, people face cheaper food price and they only have to pay the same price as the rest of the world. As for the country that is less competitive like Greece, it benefits a lot from the EU comparing to the damaging from complying to the law and regulations of EU, like the increasing employment rate and growth rate of the economy. Moreover, EU compensates to the small country in EU like Greece through giving a large amount of aid to Greece for the losses of the austerity policy. Here's the pros and cons of being a member of EU. The advantage of being a EU member is the growth of economies of the scale and competition enjoyed by EU countries can produce a faster growth rate, but it is also possible that the EU has increased its growth expectations, which has led to growth. And the disadvantage of being a EU member is such once a country leaves the EU, then its companies and governments will need time to develop new ways of doing business and developing new monetary policy, which could damage investors' confidence and cause the turbulence of the economy in the country or even the whole world. That's all of our presentation. Thank you.